The new McCrispy Strip is here. Dip approved by ketchup, tangy barbecue, honey mustard, Sprite, McFlurry, Big Mac sauce, double dipped in buffalo and ranch, more ranch, and creamy chili McCrispy Strip Dip. Now at McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
The last thing you want to hear when you need your auto insurance most is a robot with countless irrelevant menu options. Which is why with USAA Auto Insurance, you'll get great service that is easy and reliable, all at the touch of a button. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply. USAA.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? Well, with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills. Wait, did I say job title yet? Get started today and see how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
This message is brought to you by Abercrombie Kids, where the activewear is made for every summer activity, so your mini-me can bring their personal best. Summer days are always an adventure, from day camp to rec leagues and pool days. Abercrombie Kids has the shorts, tees, and swim to keep them comfy and keep up with them. Get everything for the entire summer at Abercrombie Kids. Shop in-store, online, or in the app.
Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 194 of Chalk Talk. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You have heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing well. I had a crazy couple months at work that are now like officially over, and I'm pretty much off and on vacation. After this week, I'll be on vacation for 2 weeks. So I am feeling fantastic, in a vacation state of mind here.
All right. Well, nothing better to interrupt a vacation than something that surely everyone online will be rational about. It is time for our 2025 quarterback rankings. And so each offseason, Mark and I go through this exercise and we rank quarterbacks for the upcoming season. And so a few qualifiers, just how we think about quarterback play for this exercise. We are ranking quarterbacks on a 1-year timeline. So in 2025, that means, hey, Matthew Stafford's really old. Well, that doesn't matter. We just need him for 1 year. Now, health things play into it. You might be concerned about his elbow, his back. That could affect it. We're not turning injuries off. But just sitting here right now, if we were picking quarterbacks for our team for the 2025 season, this is how we would stack them up. And there's some guys that we're not going to rank. We're not going to rank the rookies. Tyler Shuck and Cam Ward, have not seen them play in the NFL. We're just not going to rank them because that's scouting. That's not ranking. And you never know how guys are going to translate. So we always leave rookies off. And there's a few other guys we're going to leave off just by virtue of not having seen them play much, in J.J. McCarthy, who was injured for his whole rookie season, and Michael Penix Jr., who I believe played 4 games. And then there's 2 guys that we're going to leave off that did play last season as rookies, in Drake May and Caleb Williams, but did so in very poor situations, have coaching changes now, and it's just hard to get a handle sometimes on a player in their first season if they're in such a bad situation. And so we're going to hold off judgment on those guys until next year. I guess at the end of the day, where I came at on this, Mark, because you originally ranked them and I didn't, is that if I was choosing a guy for this season, I would rank them higher based on what I think of them than I felt like I could based off of last season. Yeah. And I just didn't think that's fair to them. I don't want to put them at like 24 or 25 on a list. May would have been higher than that. Caleb might not have. When I do think they're better players, and I think they deserve that second year. So they will be ranked next offseason, but I just couldn't slot them in this year.
Yeah, I had them too low for what I actually think of them, below guys who I don't think are better than them, but there was just no argument for having them above them outside of non-NFL evaluation. But yeah, they would have been really tough to rank, which is funny because the one guy from that draft class that did play a lot is going to be ranking very high on this exercise.
Yeah. And I think that's fair because, it's impressive to come out and do what Jaden Daniels did in his rookie season. And, I think you should be rewarded for that accordingly when it comes to rankings. And as is often going to be the case, because we did it with CJ Stroud last year, that ranking might fall after a second season because you are only ranking off of the sample size. So it's going to be a lot more stable for, your Baker Mayfields than it's going to be for your Jaden Daniels type. So, with all of that pontificating aside, Mark, shall we just go ahead and jump into it here?
Let's do it.
All right. How do we want to do this? Do we want to do like 3, 4, 5 guys at a time and then talk about them, or what are your thoughts?
I think we can generally go one at a time here for a bit.
Okay.
Where I at least at the start, we both have pretty much the same ranking, where we both have Mahomes number 1.
Yeah.
Is the gap shrinking there, or is he just there until someone absolutely takes it from him without a doubt?
Yeah, it's tough because you look at the stats and they've obviously been trending down. And then you look at the supporting cast around him, and that's really hard to quantify because you can't separate a quarterback from the system, the scheme around them. Eagles fans get into that debate about Jalen Hurts a lot online with a really good offensive line and a top running game and a top wide receiver duo. And people want to use that to discredit Hurts. And it's hard to riddle all of that out. All I know is what Patrick Mahomes has done is incredible. I still think he's the best quarterback in the league, despite the fact that his stats have not been reflective of it. But if you just look at the roster that he's played with offensively over the last few seasons, winning a Super Bowl with Juju Smith-Schuster as his leading receiver for the season, getting to the Super Bowl last year with the travesty that was their offensive line and skill positions around him. I think he's definitively number 1. I don't know that I so much would have him in an entirely separate tier than a couple of the next guys, though.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. And I think I agree. It is still jarring just how successful he's been from a win standpoint and a postseason standpoint. Obviously, the Super Bowl notwithstanding, but for them to make yet another Super Bowl, and I think that makes him. What's the number now with Super Bowls made and missed? Is it? I used to always give that stat out, and I've forgotten it a little bit.
Yeah, I would have to go look it up. It's been the last 5 years he's been in the Super Bowl?
He missed one in there because of Cincinnati.
Yes, so that's right.
4 of the last 5, I believe.
4 of the last 5, and here I'm gonna pull it up now. Let's go to his playoff game.
It might be 5 of 6, actually.
Okay, so Super Bowl. It's kind of actually. Pro Football Reference doesn't list the game. It just lists the week. So 3 Super Bowls in a row. And then he missed the one that Cincinnati went to. And then Super Bowl. Yeah, so he's been in 4 or 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls. And the only one he didn't, he was in the AFC Championship game and lost in overtime.
Both times that he didn't. Yeah, it lost late AFC Championship games. But, yeah, I think that's enough that he is in his own tier for me. But it's a smaller tier gap than it was in years past when we've done this.
Yeah. And so you have we have the same 2 and 3, but we have them in a different order. And I would say the guy that is closest to unseating Mahomes for me is Josh Allen, who I have at number 2. And I think that what Josh Allen has been able to do, again, with a fairly limited supporting cast. Now, obviously, he's not been able to get to the Super Bowl. And that's been the thorn in their side, is just not being able to get past Mahomes in the playoffs. However, what Josh Allen's been able to accomplish with such a limited supporting cast as well. I mean, he had Stephon Diggs for a while, and then Diggs has been gone for a couple of years. Dalton Kincaid hasn't necessarily been what they hoped. And it seems like no matter what is around Josh Allen at receiver, the Bills are just always there. And so I have Josh Allen 2. I have Lamar Jackson 3. I think Lamar has had a better supporting cast than Josh Allen over the last couple of seasons. And I can't help but penalize Lamar a little bit for the postseason losses. And I know they're not all his fault, but at a certain point, we got to make a postseason run. And that's what I need to see from Lamar, to maybe flip him with Allen. His mobility is so impressive. The things he's able to do in the passing game are so impressive. And yet they just haven't been able to get it done in the postseason. So if I was tiering them, I would probably put Josh Allen like in the same tier as Mahomes, and I might have Lamar just at the top of that next tier down.
Lamar is clearly ahead of Allen for me, and I think it was a travesty Allen won MVP last year. I think Allen's had a better supporting cast than Lamar outside of Henry this year, but that was a one-year thing so far. I mean, Lamar played one more game, but he had 400 more passing yards, 13 more touchdowns, 2 less interceptions, 400 more rushing yards. I just think Lamar is the best player in football outside of what Mahomes does in terms of a winning standpoint. The fact that we just saw Lamar have a 4,200, 41 passing touchdown, 4 interception, 915 rushing yard season, I think is unlike anything we've really ever seen. And the fact that he didn't win MVP in what was his best year and one of the best years I've ever seen an NFL player, let alone a quarterback, have, I think is a travesty. And if Mark Andrews catches that ball, I think you'd have him second.
Yeah. You know, I tried to talk myself into it, but I don't think I can. I think I'm going to have to flip him back. I was like, I don't, and we made our rankings separately, but then you get down to it, and I looked at him, and it's like our top 5's exactly the same. I think I can make the case. I think I can make the case. I was able
to lawyer Shane over to the right side there.
Yeah, it's like I think I can make the case for Allen over Lamar, but you're right. I mean, it's where my heart wanted to go to begin with. I just so desperately want him to have that postseason run and success. And I mean, they were in the AFC Championship game last year, or 2 years ago, excuse me, and it just didn't go well. And I think there were some coaching things going in there, but yeah. Okay.
And like, if Allen had a Super Bowl appearance on his resume, it'd be a different conversation for me. But like the playoff stuff dinging Lamar, and I get Allen's been better than Lamar in the playoffs, but like Allen's been a loser in the playoffs too when it's counted for him. Like I guess they've both reached the same peak. Like they've both made a conference finals. Josh has made it more than Lamar has, but if there was more of a playoff gap with Allen having a Super Bowl or even an appearance, I think I'd be more open to the conversation. But I think Lamar's the best player in the world, but with the asterisk that Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. It's tough. Both of those guys would be thought of so much differently, I think, if Patrick Mahomes didn't exist, because they would probably both have rings at this point.
Or at least if he was in the NFC even.
That's true.
They at least would have gotten appearances in the Super Bowl, maybe you break through one of the times. But, yeah, it's unbelievable.
All right, well, our number 4 and 5s are the same, Mark. So we both have Joe Burrow, number 4. We both have Jalen Hurts, number 5. Talk to me about how close that gap is and if you draw distinct tiers somewhere in there.
To me, I want to make it very clear. I think Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow are on the same level. And what I will say is, like, there's a bigger gap to me from 5 to everybody else than there is from Burrow to Hurts. And I've talked for a while how I think Burrow has been a bit overrated and he gets a handsome tax, as I've talked about before. But then last year he was unbelievable in a situation that was terrible. And I will say there was like a lot, we've talked about this on the show before, but like there was a lot of crying for Burrow that happened last year. And like, look at the stats. How are they 8-9? It's like the stats wouldn't be what they are if the defense wasn't as bad as it was. So like there is a little bit of like a chicken or the egg thing there. But of course, if the defense was average, they would have won 10, 11 games and made the playoffs, even if his stats were slightly worse. So I do think Joe Burrow is still a part of that elite tier. But I guess even a better way to say this would be, I think there's a bigger gap from Lamar and Allen, who are pretty close. Like even what I just said, notwithstanding, I think they're in their own tier away from Burrow and Hurts even. And I think the gap between number 3 and number 4 is bigger than the gap between number 4 and number 5.
Yeah, I think that's fair. To me, it is a top 3: Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, and then I'm going to have Burrow above Hurts. I think now he doesn't have the rushing threat that Hurts has. But all the things he can do pre-snap and post-snap processing and operating from the pocket. And yes, he's had a very talented receiver duo. They haven't had the run game support that the Eagles have had or the offensive line. And so I've got Burrow slightly ahead of Hurts. I have a question coming in here. So would you trade him for Jalen? And absolutely not. And that's something Johnny and I have talked about before, is that Jalen Hurts is the right quarterback for the Eagles. Like, I wouldn't trade. I think Burrow is a better quarterback than Jalen Hurts. I think the Eagles I think both teams would be worse if they swapped quarterbacks.
I agree.
And so, if you ask me about Lamar, I'm going to have a different answer. But if you ask me about Burrow, yes, I think he's a better quarterback than Hurts. I think he's a little bit ahead tier-wise than Hurts. But you don't trade those guys, because there's something about Hurts and that fit for the Eagles and the way that they want to play football that elevates everything. And so it's more than just player A is better than player B, so I would straight swap them, because there's no chance I would do that.
And continuity and not disrupting the locker room, not disrupting everything you have going on what is a Super Bowl champion too. It's the gap's not big enough to have that conversation. But yeah, I've been saying this since last year and for a long time. Jalen Hurts has been 5 on my list for a while. I think he was 5 on my list last year. But I have
that list. Stand by.
I've been saying that he hasn't. There's just not an argument. And now especially, there's not an argument for anybody else outside the top 5 to be better than Jalen Hurts right now. And maybe there's some people that can make an argument in the future and can build an argument over the next couple of years, Jaden Daniels specifically. But after Jaden Daniels' rookie year, I'm not going to put him above Jalen Hurts, who's made the playoffs in every year that he started for a football team, made 2 Super Bowls, won a Super Bowl, has put up, he was putting up MVP numbers back in 2023. Even this year, I think he went way under the radar for just how good he was. Not that fantasy is an indicator of stats correctly all the time. Jalen Hurts is being drafted as like a top 3 fantasy quarterback yet again this year, and pretty much has been every year, and puts up stats, especially in terms of the running game, to a degree that I don't think he ever will get properly talked about, Jalen Hurts, for whatever reason. And I think there's a lot of the mobile quarterbacks generally get some of those weird conversations and discourse about them.
Yeah. So last year, we both had Jalen Hurts number 6 on our list. We both had him 6. And the guy that we had number 5 leads into the conversation about who we had number 6 this year, because the guy we had number 5 last year was CJ Stroud, who came in and had a phenomenal rookie season with a team that nobody expected to do anything. And so everybody was aboard the CJ Stroud hype train. And we both have him lower than that this year. And so you can be wary of 1-year sample sizes. And that's why we're holding off on the ranking of Drake May and Caleb Williams. I don't want to penalize a guy too much for having a bad first season in a bad situation, but I do want to reward a guy who had a really good first season in a bad situation. And that's Jaden Daniels. He clocks in at number 6 for both of us. And I couldn't be more impressed by what Jaden Daniels brought his rookie season. His scrambling ability, which we've talked about for a long time, the high floor that mobility gives you as a rookie or as a quarterback in general. And I mean, he was a dynamic playmaker who can chuck the deep ball, and his deep ball accuracy continued to thrive this season. And it was a really good fit. Now, will he sustain that over the next season or two? I don't know. He's already exceeded my expectations, and so I'm not going to count him out. I will say I worry about a sophomore slump. For any guy that comes out and lights it up, especially after what we saw with Stroud in year 2, but especially for a quarterback that is running such a screen pass behind the line, passes behind the line of scrimmage, and then throw deep ball oriented offense, it feels like something defenses will start to adjust to. Now, they didn't during the regular season, and they made a run into the playoffs deep. I also have concerns about Cliff Kingsbury falling off. We saw it year after year after year, dating back to college as a head coach. Maybe he's just a great offensive coordinator, and that's going to be the good fit. Maybe teams adjust and he doesn't have that counterpunch. And so we'll see what happens with Daniels moving forward. But for right now, off of the sample we have, he's number 6 for me.
Yeah, I think we could see a very similar path with CJ Stroud. What I will say is I think his mobility gives him a little bit of a higher floor than Stroud. I don't think he will drop back as far as Stroud does, but I bet he will drop back on this list. It's just, in all likelihood, more teams seeing him and being able to adjust will probably have an impact on the list. But for what he did as a rookie, as rare as it was, and the mobility that he brings, I think it's hard to argue for anyone outside of this top 6 above him where we sit right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's keep rolling. This is where our lists start to differ a little bit. So we've got the same top 6 in the same order. It'd be a boring show if they continued to be the same. Mark, tell me who you've got at 7.
I've got Jordan Love, who I believe is one of our biggest differences, and I think you can go with who you have at 7 right after this. But Jordan Love's a guy who, this is not a statistical argument for me necessarily, but I guess in some ways it is. But he's had enough 8 to 10 game stretches of looking like a potential top 5 guy, and the guy on this list outside of Jalen Hurts that I think has the most stretches of showing that he can be in that top 5 or top 4 is there's the jokes about Jordan Love with Toyotathon. I don't know if you've seen those about once Toyotathon starts. I don't know when that exactly is on the calendar, but when Toyotathon starts, he turns it up. And I think he leaned into it last year and got some sponsorships. But he had a lot of interception problems early on in last season. I believe he had, if I'm counting correctly here, he had 11 in the first 8 weeks. And then over the next 7 weeks, he did not have a single interception. He had 1,308 yards, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 67% completion percentage down the stretch in those last 7 games. And the Packers head to the playoffs there. Obviously, he didn't have a great playoff game. 3 interceptions against the Eagles. I think we can now properly put that Eagles defense into context and say that the Rams struggled for a lot of that game. Washington turned the ball over a ton in that game, and even Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs had, very little to say against that defense until garbage time started. So we do have a sample size of Jordan Love succeeding in the playoffs, though. Last year, we had that game against Dallas in the wild card round where he torched Dan Quinn's defense, torched Parsons, and torched that Dallas defense, and then went and played a really, really good San Francisco team on the road, and for 3 quarters looked really, really good. Struggled in the fourth quarter, had a couple bad turnovers, but I think I've seen enough in stretches and flashes with Jordan Love, combined with, the stats are fine overall. He's probably if you're going strictly based on stats, probably the 10th, 11th best quarterback, I'd say, over the last couple of years. But I'm grasping onto that stretch to end 2 years ago and that stretch to end 2024.
Yeah. There's been some elite stretches for Jordan Love. He's still, feels like the dude's been in the league for forever. And I guess he kind of has. He's 27 or something like that now. At the end of the day, the streakiness brings him down a bit for me. When he is firing on all cylinders, he is, easily a top 6-7 quarterback. the lows can be a little bit low. And, it's hard to, or it's easy to forget this guy's only played, he hasn't played that many games. He's played like seasons. 33 games over the course of his NFL career, essentially. He's going to be 27 years old. He didn't play. He started one game in his first couple of seasons in the league. And so, he's less experienced than most guys his age. And so I think the streakiness that's involved with that. But in the 2 playoff games they've lost the last 2 seasons, he's thrown 5 combined interceptions. And so at least so far in his young career, the lows have come out on the big stage. And so that drops him a little lower for me. I think with some more time and some more consistency, he probably cracks the top 10 for me, but he sits at number 11 for me right now, acknowledging fully the highs are high and the lows are pretty low. But I will mention he is up a spot from where I had him last year. I had him at number 12 last year. He ticks up to number 11 this year.
Where did I have him?
You had him at number 9 last year. So he moved up for both of us. 1 spot for me, 2 spots for you. He is going in the right direction. I view him as an ascending player, but I just don't quite have him inside my top 10 yet.
And the last 8 games of 2023, which are really even more impressive than what we saw to close this year, he went to 2,150 yards, 18 touchdowns, 1 pick on 70.3% completion percentage, multiple rushing touchdowns in there as well, really high air yard per attempt. So he has closed years in fantastic ways. Also, part of last year, he did open the year with a leg injury that he tried to play through and then made worse and then came back again. So I'm willing to forgive some of those early interceptions due to just not being healthy.
Yeah. All right, well, let's keep rolling. We're kind of on the other end of the spectrum with the guy I have number 7 in Matthew Stafford. And I believe you had him at number 10.
Yeah.
So Matthew Stafford, 37 years old, long career. Everybody knows Stafford's story. And I just think at his best, Stafford is still makes throws almost that nobody else can make in the NFL. Now, there's always, for the rest of his career, there will be questions about his health, with his elbow, with his back, with his shoulder, with all of those things. But, to me, you look at this team that is so young everywhere, and there's one veteran on the team. And, obviously, Puka Nacua is a great player. But Puka Nacua was a day 3 draft pick that walked in and set records. And a lot of that is because of Matthew Stafford. I don't think Nacua has that success somewhere else either. And so they're intertwined. Last year, Cooper Kupp is falling off and he's gone now. And I don't know if the Stafford train can continue to roll, but I know that there's really not a quarterback. Well, that's not true. Stafford is one of those quarterbacks that just scares me. When your team is playing him, I'm legitimately scared because if Stafford is on, he's near unstoppable. And so I've got him at number 7. You've got him at number 10. I would assume there's just some age and injury based things in there with Stafford on that for you.
Yeah. And the Stafford thing is he's not even a fantasy option for what it's worth. The statistics are just he only had 20 touchdowns last year. There's no rushing. Again, not a fantasy show, and I'm not ranking them based on fantasy. But I think sometimes the fantasy does put into perspective the stat argument. And Stafford statistically, week to week, is just not a top 10 guy. But then when you watch him on a 1-game sample size, he can look like the best quarterback in the world. He gave the Eagles defense a ton of problems in a stretch where they were pretty historically good the rest of that playoffs. So he was – Jalen Carter being blocked away from probably putting away that team and that defense that helped win the Super Bowl. So I totally understand how Stafford could be 6 on this sheet, to be honest. I also think I could make an argument that he could be lower than 10, but it's just based on kind of how you're. Yeah. I think over a full season, I'd rather have Love and Daniels than the guys 8, 9. A 1-game sample size, he's probably 6 on my list. So tough ranking. He's one of the tougher guys that I had to rank.
He is. Because you go look at it, and he is the quarterback that gave the Eagles the most difficulty.
Absolutely.
And so an Eagles fan, an Eagles guy, it kind of tips your maybe it gives you a little bit of a bias that way. And so maybe I do have him a little high, but Stafford just terrifies me, and he has for years, and that feeling still hasn't gone away. So, okay, that gets us to number 8. We have the same number 8. We both have Justin Herbert at 8. Mark, I'll throw it to you first with Herbert.
It's pretty funny. My co-host on radio, Sean Bernard, he's a huge Justin Herbert hater. Like, if we were doing this, and I'm sure I will now for radio on Saturday because I already have this exercise done, so it's an easy done and dusted thing I can dust off for radio. He's going to have Herbert like 20, and it's going to be an annoying conversation to have with him where I'm like, I get it. He's not a top 5 guy, but you go too far. And he's made me like the pro Herbert guy at my radio station, which is so funny because for how long I ranted and raved about Herbert being overrated. What Justin Herbert did last year is more impressive than anything I think he's done in his entire career. And I get kind of similar to Stafford. Maybe the statistics weren't there, but they were clearly going with a ball control offense and kind of limiting mistakes. And they kind of let him fly a little later on in the year, still had close to 4,000 yards passing and only 3 interceptions. This was a team and a roster, Shane, that I was saying could finish bottom 3, bottom 5, and give them a top 3, top 5 pick. And Herbert carried them. I don't know how many games they won. I'm assuming 11. I think they won like 11 games and made the playoffs there. Did he blow it in the playoffs? Did he play terrible in the playoffs? Absolutely. I'm not going to penalize him for what he did in the playoffs instead of rewarding him for getting that team that I thought was going to stink into the playoffs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they were 11-6 last season. And
that's crazy because that's a team that I thought was going to be 5-12, 6-11, and they cut a ton of payroll, went young, and it paid off. And now we've talked about it a little bit, but I think the Chargers are going to win the AFC. I think they're the best roster in the AFC, and I think Herbert, the gap between Lamar and Allen to Herbert is not big enough to make up what I think the gap is going to be from those rosters, and maybe even from the coaching of Jim Harbaugh compared to a guy like Sean McDermott. I think Herbert's in a good position to rise up this list. The Chargers also took a guy in Trey Harris, who I know we both like, so that should help them at wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, they played a ball control offense, but Justin Herbert had a higher EPA per play last season than Patrick Mahomes, than Jaden Daniels, than Jalen Hurts, than Matthew Stafford, all guys we have ahead of him. And so, the roster wasn't great and the offense wasn't a QB stats offense, but he outpaced a lot of these guys in terms of the explosiveness. And he's such a good thrower of the football. He's such a quick processor. And, he was saddled with Brandon Staley for a few years, and he's got some playoff choke jobs on his resume. And that's why he's not higher. I used to have him higher on these lists, but I still think he's a really good quarterback. And I think he's a guy that will end up higher on this list throughout his career.
And I think part of why I don't hate on him anymore is I think I won the war. Like he was ranked above Hurts, and he was part of that top 4, top 5. And, it's Steven Ruiz, and some people are still going to put him there. But I think this is correct. This is what, if Herbert was being talked about at the number 8 quarterback for all those years, the last couple of years, I never would have had my heel turn on Justin Herbert and been an anti-Herbert guy. But people were putting him up there with Lamar and Allen and above Hurts and above Burrow. And that's where I have my issues with it. Now, I'm perfectly fine with Herbert. There's no ill will.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go to your number 9. He is my number 10. It's Baker Mayfield, a guy that a couple of years ago I never would have thought that we would be talking about as the top 10 quarterback in the league. I mean, this is a guy that lost the starting job for the Carolina Panthers. And now we're talking about him as a top 10 quarterback. Mark, how is that not crazy?
It's insane. I mean, this is one of the craziest quarterback careers we've ever seen.
By the way, he was number 20 for me last year, number 19 for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the craziest quarterback careers we've ever seen. Number 1 pick in a draft where the whole draft process, nobody thought he should be the number 1 pick. Yeah. And, he wasn't the right number 1 pick either. But he then goes on to, end the playoff drought for the Browns and he becomes kind of a legend there briefly before flaming out. He leaves. He has to go to Carolina, where he gets cut midseason. Then he goes to the Rams, saves his career in the second half of the year in a game where he show up on like a Sunday and play a Monday Night Football game, and
it was something like that.
Lit it up.
He led a game-winning drive, and he didn't even know the names of some of the guys he was playing with.
The guy's just a baller. There's something about him, and obviously 2023 goes 9-8 with Tampa. They make the playoffs, 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And I think both of us were like, "Wow, that's pretty incredible stuff from Baker." But that's probably a one-year blip, and we've seen Baker have these good years and drop back the next year. And maybe we thought that was the ceiling. And then he throws for 500 more yards. He throws for 13 more touchdowns. He did throw more interceptions. But Tampa wins another game. They're a 10-win team. They win the division again. They have playoff success. Or he played pretty well in the playoffs 2 years ago to go to the second round. And pretty sure they had Detroit on the ropes in that game as well, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember that game that well, but I'm pretty sure he had Detroit on the ropes in that game to go to the NFC Championship 2 years ago. And here we are. The guy had 4,500 yards last year, 41 touchdowns. Like, I think you've got to put him in the top 10.
Yeah, it's never a place that I thought I would end up with Baker. And I love Baker. I mean, Baker's an Oklahoma guy via transfer. But yeah, and you're right. They did have Detroit on the ropes in the divisional round in 2023 when they mercifully ended the Eagles season. And then they lost by one score to Detroit in a game that was tied going into the fourth quarter. So I never would have dreamed that we'd be talking about Baker as a franchise guy, a top 10 guy, but here we are. And I don't think that's overrating 1 year. Like, if you look over the years, he's finally got some stability that he never had in Cleveland, really, and that he certainly didn't have in Carolina. And he's stepped up and played well. And so Baker Mayfield's probably the biggest mover upward for us from last season.
And even in the playoff game this year, he went 15 of 18 for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, it wasn't like he was the problem and the reason they lost that game. They couldn't really get anything going on the ground. They didn't do well on defense. I remember Washington had those long drives where they just kept the ball away from Tampa forever. I definitely don't remember watching that game and being like, "Oh, Baker lost them the game." I think they had the one fumble, but I don't even think that was on Baker, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, didn't he have like an insane scramble in that game on the game-tying drive, and then Washington scored as time expired to end the game or something like that?
You're right. They did. I think they tied the game, and Washington did score to win the game. I think Tampa did have a chance again after they tied it to win it, and they didn't, if I remember correctly. But then Washington did go win it. But yeah, it wasn't like, oh, this is change. This is a negative for Baker. It's funny because Tampa's a team again that I'm staring at, and I'm staring at the roster. And I kind of like it less than I think most do, and I want to pick Atlanta to win that division, but I just keep picking against Tampa and keep doubting Tampa to win that division, and they keep doing it.
No, it looks like Washington kicked the game-winning field goal with zeros on the clock. So Tampa tied the game, and then Washington went on a 4.5-minute drive to end the game. So we don't get to say he left the field with the lead, but he wasn't behind, at least.
Yeah.
After Zoomies at the dog park, it's time for Drive Up at Target. In goes a big bag of kibble and one squeaky chicken toy for the good boy. Drive Up that's ready when you are, only in the Target app. Just tap Target.
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track-downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
I didn't think the pain from the shingles rash would affect simple, everyday tasks like bathing, getting dressed, or even walking around. I was wrong. Though not everyone at risk will develop it, 99% of people over the age of 50 already have the virus that causes shingles, and it could reactivate at any time. I developed it, and the blistering rash lasted for weeks. Don't learn the hard way, like I did. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
Oh, such a clutch pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom, too. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
The GOAT.
Save up to 50% with minimum purchase at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car riding your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
So, well, we mentioned Baker was our biggest mover up. This guy might be one of our biggest movers down, but he checks in at number 9 for me. He was number 5 for me last year. He's number 13 for you this year. It's CJ Stroud. And so CJ Stroud was the Jaden Daniels of last year, and I think that's important to remember as we revisit the conversation next year, and Daniels may move significantly. But it was a rough year for Stroud and the Texans. There was a lot of injury issues going on with the wide receiver room. Some of those are going to linger. There was a lot of offensive line issues, and those are going to be even worse this year than they were last year. The stat floated around that basically the pressure rate Mahomes had in the Super Bowl was essentially the season-long pressure rate for CJ Stroud. Now, some caveat to that is that the Eagles were doing it without blitzing at all in the Super Bowl. And so there was nowhere to go with the ball either. And that's not necessarily the case throughout the whole season for the Texans, but there was a lot of circumstances stacked against Stroud. I still love Stroud as a player, but there's no doubt that he took a step backwards in 2024. So I dropped him from 5 to 9, and you dropped him from 5 down to 13.
Yeah, there was just too many really rough games. And I know that a lot of it's not his fault, but there's just too many embarrassing moments for that team, for a guy to be ranked too high on my board, and 400 less passing yards in 2 more games, 3 less touchdowns in 2 more games, 7 more interceptions, more games, but the average yards per game, he was down like 60 yards per game. The QBR went down, the passer rating went down. The completion percentage went down. Like everything besides record actually went down. He went 9-6 the year before, and then 10-7 this year. And I kind of think the same's going to happen with Daniels. Like I think they're still going to win 10, 11 games, but I don't think they're going to take the step or be a 13-ish win team that I think some people are going to predict them to be. But Stroud this is a put up or shut up year for me. You fired the OC. This year will tell us more of what Stroud is than I think either of the first 2 years did.
Yeah, that's fair. Let's keep rolling on here. We'll fill out our left-hand columns here. My number 12 and number 13 is Dak Prescott and Trevor Lawrence. So I have Dak at 12. I've got Lawrence at 13. You have those guys in the same order as your number 14 and 15. And so we can kind of talk about them together. Dak is a guy that I defended for a lot of years. As he's just a cerebral football player. There's been too many embarrassing seasons for the Cowboys at this point. There's been too many embarrassing finishes to seasons in the playoffs with Dak. And at a certain point, like, man, I love watching him play. He throws one of the better seam balls in the NFL. I think he reads things out really well. At the end of the day, you don't bring me a lot of mobility. And the goal of the game is to win in the playoffs. And it's something that he has not been able to do. And so I can't justify putting him any higher than number 12. He's still a quarterback that scares you because he can get on. And they add George Pickens this year, so they have a viable wide receiver too. And it's the first time they've had a viable wide receiver too since Amari Cooper left. But I think the thing with Prescott is maybe I inflate him a little bit because of his draft spot too, back in the day, that he was a lower drafted guy. But I just think he's a really good football player. I don't think the George Pickens thing is going to go well this year. I know a lot of people are clinging to that. I saw a wide receiver duo ranking that had the Cowboys with like the number 2 duo in the NFL. And I just don't see that. Like, George Pickens is an incredibly talented player, but when Mike Tomlin gives up on you because you're a nutcase, I just don't know that you're going to fit anywhere else. So I've got Prescott 12. Anything you want to throw out there about Prescott before we move on to Lawrence?
Yeah, he just wasn't very good to start this year. If he was better to start the year, I would be able to excuse it more and say, oh, well, it's an injury and bad year for Dallas and everything like that. But he wasn't very good himself to start out the year. And then Trevor is just impossible to talk about. He has whatever happened this year with Doug, very similar to what happened with the Carson Wentz development, whatever happened with him way back with Urban Meyer, to the point where I'm still grasping on to a 19-game stretch from November 6th, 2022 to November 19th, 2023. He had 19 games. The Jaguars went 14-5. He threw for 4,700 yards. He had 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, ran for 500 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns in that stretch, and won a playoff game in that stretch. And that year in calendar time where he played like a top 5 quarterback is just impossible for me to get rid of, and impossible for me to say didn't happen and he's actually just bad. So that's why I'm still kind of bullish on him to end up being higher on this list in a couple of years, but I also can't put him any lower than 15 because I don't think anyone that's below him on my list has had a stretch like that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, with Lawrence, I mean, he came in with the generational prospect tag, and I feel like we're a lot closer to a bust tag at this point. He has had less than ideal circumstances in a way that we've talked about with Herbert. For me, the difference between those two, Lawrence does way too many boneheaded things on the football field. There's way too many fumbles, way too many dumb interceptions in a way that Herbert doesn't. And he's got a really good receiver now in Brian Thomas Jr. He's got a new coaching staff coming in. It's make or break time for Lawrence. And so for me, this year is going to tell me a lot about where he's at going forward. So, okay, let's go to your number 11 and 12. And you have at number 11, Jared Goff. And then at number 12, you have Brock Purdy. Goff clocks in at 14 for me, and Brock Purdy clocks in at 16 for me. So we're not terribly far off on these guys, although they are some of the bigger separations we have on the list. So talk to me about Goff and Purdy.
Yeah, Goff's numbers are just too hard for me to throw away. With him having 4,600 yards, 37 touchdowns last year. They were the best offense. Now is the time to prove it if you're Jared Goff. When Ben Johnson's gone, it's on you now. It's on Jared Goff to prove he wasn't a Ben Johnson merchant. So good chance that this ranking is lower next year. But for now, it's just strictly how good that Lions offense has been and how good his numbers have been. It's mainly because I think this tier of quarterbacks is so flawed in so many different ways that I'm kind of just – he probably just had the best season any of these guys have had. Maybe Dak has a year up there that you could put up there with what Goff just did. I'd have to dive into it. But that's kind of what it came down to, not much more than that. And then with Purdy, I talked about it on the show a lot last year. He impressed me so much last year. Like everybody had the 2 years previous to that where people wanted to throw his EPA up there and how it was historic and all these other advanced metrics while ignoring the fact that he had Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings was a solid number 3, George Kittle, a great O-line, and in my opinion, as I've talked about, the smartest offensive play caller of our generation in Kyle Shanahan. But last year, when you took Christian McCaffrey off that team, you took Brandon Ayuk off that team, Deebo Samuel got fat. The O-line was worse. All those things happened, And I still thought he was one of the better quarterbacks you'd watch every Sunday when he would go out there and play. I thought he created more of his own instead of in the past. It felt like he was just doing what Kyle had written on the play call, and he was just putting the ball where it needed to be 8 yards away, and that was pretty much it. Last year, it felt like he needed to create more himself, be a little bit more mobile. And even if the stats aren't much different, or this is a big eye test one to me. I really do think he took a step last year, or maybe it was more that I just saw him in a non-elite roster context. And I thought 2 years ago, if you would have told me he would play without any of those guys, I would have thought it would have been a train wreck. And the fact that I thought he was still pretty darn good, maybe I'm even overinflating that.
All right. Yeah, I think all of that's fair. You look at Goff, and you mentioned, Goff versus Dak. To me, the difference between those two guys comes down to Dak has played with bad offensive play callers for a long time.
True.
And I think Goff has played with one of the better play callers in the league. I expect them to take a big step back this year.
Two of them. Who did he play? He had McVay before that.
Yeah. And I expect Goff to fall off fairly hard this year. I haven't seen, Goff has unquestionably gotten better since when he was in LA. And you should. A lot of these guys we write off so fast, and they just don't get the time. And Goff got the time and reps to develop, and he is a better player. I still don't think he is on the level of his production the last few years, and we'll see that this year. I have my doubts. That's why he's a little lower. And I agree with a lot of what you said on Brock Purdy as well. His ability to create some things this year, and with the absence of some of those superstars, and obviously the team kind of fell apart, but the offense wasn't inept. And if you would have told me 2 years ago Brock Purdy could do that, I wouldn't have believed you. And I don't think he could have, and he can now. And so he's another one of those guys that time in the league and reps is really going to benefit. At the end of the day, I just couldn't put him above a guy like Goff or, Lawrence, Dak. I couldn't put him above some of those guys.
We've talked in the past about either the 16th or the 17th guy, or we usually come up with an average, don't we? Or who
the Kirk Cousins line?
Yeah, the Cousins line. We've had some creative names for them in the past, and some have been suggested by comments, I remember. But I'm curious to get to our 16, 17 here. If we have a guy close enough on both of our lists that we can anoint as the official average man.
Well, we do, because my number 15 is your number 16. It's Geno Smith.
So
I think it's the Geno line this year, or it could be we have the same number 17, but it's a second-year guy in Bo Nix, so maybe we don't want to use him. So I think it's probably the Geno line. And Geno, I think Geno's a little underrated by people. He does so much to mitigate pressure surrendered by his offensive line that was a train wreck in Seattle. I'm just really curious to see what he does this year with Ashton Genty, with Brock Bowers. I'm anxious to see what that offense can be. And so Geno Smith is the average guy for me, our Geno Smith line, but I think he's a good football player. Once we start to get after Geno, we get guys I don't really want as a starter. I think you can do a lot of stuff with Geno as a starter if you've got the right guy around, or the right team and play callers around him. And then with Bo Nix, really good in year one at time. I wouldn't say really good, a lot better than I expected in year one with Sean McVay. I think a lot of that's more McVay related than Nix related, but he's a guy that is tough to rank. I'd like to see some more from him in year two.
Yeah, Geno, this is a guy who over the last 3 years with Seattle averaged 4,100 yards a season. And they never went below 500, 9-8, 8-7, 10-7. Obviously, never anything too crazy. But that roster is not a 12-5 roster or anything like that. I think he did what he was supposed to do there. And I'm actually kind of annoyed that you have him higher than me on the list. I thought I'd have him highest at 16. But honestly, there's a strong argument that he's better than Trevor Lawrence right now. The Trevor Lawrence argument is so potential based, and you're grasping onto things we saw in the past. And so there's a strong argument I could bump him up to 15 above Trevor there. But Geno's a guy, I expect Geno to have a really fun year. I think the Raiders are going to be competitive. That Raiders team is going from terrible quarterback play, terrible head coaching, no running game, to, at the very least, average quarterback play, average coaching, and an elite running game.
If you told me that Geno should be above Goff, Lawrence, and Prescott, and so at number 12 on my list, I wouldn't fight you too hard on it. I think these guys are all kind of in a pretty similar range. What's funny is I forgot he was with the Raiders now. When I was first punching in the quarterbacks' names, I punched Gardner Minshew in for the Raiders. And I got to the end of my ranking, and I was like, where is Geno? And I was like, oh, yeah, he's a Raider, and Gardner Minshew's not even there anymore. But
Minshew,
yeah.
I don't think he got picked up anywhere. Oh, no, he's Kansas City.
Yeah,
Kansas City. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so that gets us through top 17. My number 18 is your number 19. It's Kyler Murray. And that's a guy that's fallen quite a bit for us. Last year, he was number 11 for me, number 12 for you. At the end of the day, you got to do something now. I feel like Kyler has had a lot of potential for a lot of years, and it just hasn't turned into winning. And it's been across a couple different coaches, been across some different schemes, been across different weapons around him. I think at this point, Kyler's just kind of a middling quarterback until he proves differently.
I think it's hard to not feel disappointed in Kyler after watching Cliff with Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
That's something that I keep coming back to. And I've talked about this. It's unbelievable that the Cardinals are just running it back. Same head coach, same quarterback, same offensive play caller for the third straight year when Kyler's gotten worse considerably in their time there. So I'm just done. I'm out on Kyler. I think he's a loser. I think his height really, really limits the way that you have to call football. I'm just done. I don't believe in this guy anymore, and I wouldn't want him to be my quarterback.
All right. Your number 18 and my number 20 are the same. It is Tua. Tua is interesting. I saw stuff going around on Twitter about how Tua is better than Jalen Hurts. That's ridiculous. Tua is Tua is. First of all, there's the health aspect of Tua, and that's tough. Because when you look at the injuries that he's had and the concussions and things like that, that one is tough. But Tua is probably like the most accurate middle of field thrower in the NFL. And he plays in a scheme that's predicated on hitting spots at the right time. And he can do that, but he's also one of the most, oh crap, that guy wasn't open where he was supposed to be, and I don't know what to do. Quarterbacks in the NFL too. I feel like he's the most scheme-specific quarterback in the league, and if one minor thing goes wrong, the entire offense dies. And to me, that's just severely limiting. I was talking about this in my Patreon Discord, and one of the guys in there said that Tua is like Marvel, no plan post-snap. And I thought that was great. It made me laugh out loud. So I got to give that a shout out to Corey, who said that in our Discord. But I'm out on a guy that can't create, and I don't think Tua can create.
Yeah, I'm pretty closed out on Tua. I do think you have a name above Tua. That is crazy.
All right. The name I have above Tua is Bryce Young. And I've got him at 19. You've got him at 22. I just know what Tua is at this point, and I would rather have Bryce Young because I think Bryce Young played better last season. I think Bryce Young played really well in some stretches last season. And so to me, it's one of those things. If I'm picking who I'd rather have in 2025, I'd rather have Bryce because I think there's untapped potential there that's headed in the right direction. And I just think with Tua, it is maxed out. It is what it is. He's not ever going to be able to play the cold weather games. He's not ever going to be able to play against a physical team that can disrupt guys off the line. And I just think it's severely limiting. So I wouldn't be thrilled about either guy as my quarterback, but I'd rather have Bryce.
I have a take on Carolina and Bryce Young that I hate to say.
Okay.
Because I was a Bryce Young guy. I had Bryce Young above CJ Stroud. I loved Bryce Young as a prospect. I'm really happy that he seems to at least save his career from going completely down the tubes after that rookie year. Not his fault. But I think there's a chance that Bryce Young might have set the bar so low that when we saw development from him later, I think we might be overreacting a little bit. And I think I did it live in the moment as it was happening too. But if you just look at that last 10 games, where Carolina did go 4-6, which is, I think, impressive with that roster. And he was still only averaging 210 yards per game. So he had 2,100 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in 10 games. So like, it's not like he wasn't doing anything elite at all, or even like above average, I'd say. But I think there's a chance we saw him be so bad that when there was signs of life, we overemphasized it a little bit. And when I first went through all the schedules, I think I had Carolina around 9 wins. And I do love some of the things they did this offseason. Rico Dowdle, second running back to bring in there. Tet McMillan, one of my guys that they drafted. I forget what they did on defense in the draft. I'm pretty sure they got some guys I liked. Did they get Princely, maybe?
They got Princely and
Landon or Scorton? Scorton, yeah. I knew they got a couple edge rushers. Yeah, and that's a great draft right there. T-Mac, Princely, and Scorton. That's a lot of fun, but I think there's a chance people might be going too far on Carolina, including my first reaction when I did the schedule, because I think it might be more of a 7-win team.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep rolling along. You have guys at 20 and 21 that I have in the same order at 21 and 22. That is Sam Darnold at 20, 21 for me. Justin Fields at 21, 22 for me.
I wanted so badly to flip this. It's just hard to make the actual argument for it with how good Darnold was last year.
Yeah.
In my heart of hearts, I really do think this is my guarantee. We'll be ranking Justin Fields as the Jets quarterback next year. He's going to be the Jets QB. He's holding on to the job next year. I'm confident in saying that, and I don't know if I'm confident in saying the same about Sam Darnold with Jalen Milroe sitting behind him in Seattle. So
I think Darnold's going to have a rough year behind the Seahawks offensive line. If you want a litmus test for what I was talking about with how much Geno does to mitigate pressure, watch Sam Darnold play football this year in Seattle, because he imploded at the end of the season against the Lions. And I think it will be more of that this year in Seattle, because that offensive line is not great. And I think he's going to have to deal with the same things Geno dealt with that made people like, he did such a good job. People are like, oh, their O-line's not that bad. I think if you watch it this year, it's going to look bad. And I think Darnold is he's going to struggle to hang on to that job long-term.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think there's a good chance. I think there's a better chance Justin Fields is on this list next year than Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, let's keep rolling. We can talk about our last 4 kind of together here. We've got one minor flip. So you have Aaron Rodgers at 23, as do I. And then we flip Daniel Jones and Russell Wilson. I have Jones above Wilson. You have Wilson above Jones. And then we both have Joe Flacco at number 26. Who even knows if he's going to be the starter? You don't want any of these guys as your quarterback. I will say there's an outside shot Aaron Rodgers can have a good year. 2 years ago, he injures the Achilles the first game of the year. We didn't talk as much about concerns with him coming off the Achilles going into last year as we did Kirk, because he had such a longer recovery time. But it clearly could still be an issue. So he's a year further removed from the injury. He's in a new environment. I think there's a chance that Aaron Rodgers could have a really good season. I still wouldn't want him as my quarterback because of the circus that he brings with him.
Mm-hmm.
These other guys, you don't want any of these guys. Daniel Jones, we know what he is. Russell Wilson, we know what he is. Joe Flacco, we know what he is. Those are pretty much just line them up, knock them down guys for me.
Daniel Jones should not be above Russell Wilson. That's you hate Russell Wilson so much.
I would easily rather have Daniel Jones than Russell Wilson.
Russ was fine for Pittsburgh. He was fine. He was okay. By the way, his 11 game stats are like really similar to the Bryce Young stats. I just gave out. They're pretty similar. But Daniel, I hate Daniel Jones the way you hate Russell Wilson. So I'm not unbiased on Jones either. If Anthony Richardson was on this list, would you have ranked Richardson above Wilson?
Probably not. No.
I think Jones would have been the starter anyway, but with what happened with Richardson's injury, I think it's probably locked up now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been the Achilles heel for him, is just injury after injury after injury.
And with the Browns, whoever they're starting is last on this list.
Yeah, no doubt. Whether it's Flacco or Watson or one of the rookies we wouldn't then rank, but
yeah,
it's a bad time to be a Cleveland Brown fan.
I'm willing to rank Dylan Gabriel 26. If Dylan Gabriel's the starter, I'm willing to rank him.
Better than Joe Flacco, is what you're saying.
Well, I don't think so. I actually think Joe Flacco would be much better than Dylan Gabriel this year.
Yeah, they should definitely just start Shedeur, but that's a whole other conversation.
I kind of get that maybe they should just start Flacco or Pickett and tank or Gabriel.
Oh yeah, I forgot they had Pickett. I would Pickett. Pickett would be higher than Flacco. If it was Pickett as the starting quarterback, I would put him 24. I'd put him above Wilson and Jones. Yeah,
I don't think Pickett's anything. I think Pickett might be the one that gets traded or cut somehow.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Who knows though? Yeah, they should just cut Gabriel. He shouldn't have been drafted. The guy stinks, but they took him in the 3rd round, so you can't cut him.
Yeah. Yeah, that never made any sense. But there you have it, guys. Those are our QB rankings that I'm sure everyone will be rational about online. It's always fun. This is the time of the year where I post. There's nothing else going on Twitter, so I post the list and then mute Twitter for a couple days and let it all blow over. But there you have it. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know who you think we're too high and too low on. It's always interesting to see where other people have quarterbacks ranked. Especially if you can manage to do it in a semi-unbiased way. And that's often a struggle, understandably. But I think that's going to about do it for this one. Mark, do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Final thought. Everybody sees Sinners. Whether it's I think it's on, you can rent it or buy it out there now. Sinners is the best movie of the last 5 years. I saw it for the 2nd time in theaters. Special film. Not a football related topic, but had to shout out Sinners.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for episode number 194 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review wherever you stream your podcast. The Eagles Pin Pull Network needs more listeners, viewers, fans. So share it with your friends. We'd greatly appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter. I am at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. And we will catch you guys next time.